Welcome to Python Pro, a 30-day workshop by CTC. Today on day 6, we'll be looking at the looping statements, in particular the for loop and its example. So moving on to what is a for loop, say if you want to print from 1 to 100, instead of giving 100 print statements, we can use one print statement and increment a variable and then give it inside the print statement and it prints your number for 100 times. So for loop enables us to repeat a particular set of statements until the condition is satisfied. So a for loop is used for iterating over a sequence of dictionary, tuple, list, string, and for loop allows us to perform repetitive tasks efficiently. So moving on to the syntax on how to write a for statement. So we'll be using the for keyword followed by the variable in keyword and the sequence. Say, is it a string or list or tuple or dictionary? And then the code that you won't execute will be followed. Moving on to examples, we have first example is iterating over a list. So here I've declared a list and the for loop goes like for the variable in list or the sequence and the statement that I want to loop or the statement I want to repeat is going to be printing each element in the list. So this fruit is going to take uh, each element for every loop until the condition fails, until there is no more elements in the list. Moving on to example 2 using range function. Range function helps to iterate over a sequence of numbers where I starts from 0. Like Python assumes that I starts from 0 and till how much you want to run the loop. Say I have given 5. So until I reaches 5, this loop is going to run. Say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the loop is going to run 4 times, see 5 times. And I'm going to print from 0 to 4. So here we have a flowchart on depicting how the for loop works. Say you start and then you have a condition that you have to check, and if the condition is true, you're going to increment, and if the condition is false, it is going to end. So taking an example of printing numbers from 1 to n, say I get n from the user as 10 and say I use the range function. The range function takes as start, stop and the increment. Start, and by default the start is considered as 0 and the increment as 1, and stop is the one that we initialize or we give. Say a range of 10 will print from 0 to 9. Whereas if I want to start from 1, I'm going to specify it as 1, comma, stop at 10 and then increment with 1. So the condition will go like if 1 less than or equal to 10, I'm going to print. And then once print statement is finished, I'm going to increment the I. So it goes like the I was 1 previously and now it is going to be 2. It will check if 2 is less than or equal to 10. I'm going to print it again and then I'm going to increment it again. It checks. This loop runs again and again until I becomes 10 and it checks 10 less than or equal to, and then it increments to 11 where the condition fails and it moves to the false phase. It is going to, we are going to write it like for I in range of 1 comma 10, I'm not going to mention the increment as it is going to be default. So I'm going to give print of I. Similarly, I'm moving to printing the odd index list in values. Say I have so the index will be going like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So if I have to check the index value is odd, I'm going to use for and the variable in L. Say the list, I'm giving it as here, the sequence that I'm mentioning it here. But the condition is not just going to be I. We're going to check if it is the odd index. So I mod 2 not equal to 0. If I mod 2 is equal to 0, it is going to be an even number. So if this condition is not true, say not equal to, then it is going to be an odd. So the for loop condition goes like this and our print statement follows it. So print of I. So this will give us, moving on to the factorial calculation. So a factorial is nothing but repetitive multiplication of sequence of numbers. Say if I want to print 5 factorial, it is going to be 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into 5, and this sequence can be made using the for loop. So to say I want to find the factorial of 5 itself, I'm going to declare a variable outside as f equal to 1. Now I'm going to give the for loop. So for I in, I'm going to use a range function 1 comma 6. Since this goes till 1 less than 6 and we want 5, so 5 less than 6, and then the loop runs to 6 less than 6 and this condition fails, and we'll have from 1 to 5. If we give 5 here, we will get the factorial only till 4. I'll explain that. So while this condition is true, we are going to multiply f into I. So once this for loop finishes, we are going to print. So initially I is going to be 1 and the condition goes like I less than 6. So I here is 1. It checks if 1 less than 6 condition is true. So the f value goes like, this is nothing but f equal to f into I. So now f is going to contain 1 into 1. Since I have declared f as 1 here, so this value is going to be 1. So f now is going to be 1. The statement is over, so it is going to increment. Say I equal to 2, condition is satisfied. Now f is going to be like 1 into 2, statement over, increments. So condition true again. So f equal to 2 into 3, 6, statement over, increment. So 6 into 4, again increment, f equal to say not 5, 24 into 5 is going to be 120. Again it will increment because 5 less than 6, statement over. So it is going to check if 6 is less than 6. It is not true, so the looping statement comes out, and now we have the 5 factorial. We are going to print 120 as a result. So, moving on with the password validation, where we have conditions like password character should be at least 8 characters, should contain uppercase, lowercase, and digits. So, to check this, so you have the third question here. We will be having a if on top of all the conditions because we have the password length to be at least 8 characters and then only we can move on to other condition. So if that fails, then the password is right away invalid. So if length of say str1 is my password is greater than or equal to 8. Str1 that I get the input from password say. Now, now I'll check if the length of char is going to be length of string is going to be more than 8. So if this condition is true, I'm going to go inside for loop for char in str1. I'm going to iterate through the string by character by character. So I'll go from S T O P P and it goes on like that. So I'm going to check if this is going to contain if this function is upper is used to check if the character is in uppercase or lowercase. So similar to the upper function, it converts this string to its uppercase while this just checks if the character is in uppercase or lowercase. Hence this will be returning true or false. So if this statement is going to be true, I'm going to have some variable called uppercase as true. I'm going to check again if the character dot is lower similar to is upper is lower is going to check if the character is in its lower case and it also returns true or false. In lower case is also true if character dot is digit. As you can guess, is digit is going to check if the character is a number or not. So if this condition is true, I'm going to say this is going to be true. Once this for loop ends, I'm going to give another if statement where it is going to check the uppercase this variable and this variable and this. Now I'm going to print value. I've given only simple if statement because I don't have any else part to check. I only want to make sure that this string contains an uppercase, contains a lowercase, and it contains a digit. If only all these conditions are true, the password is going to be valid. The Fibonacci sequence we have 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and etc. So uh, how do we print such a sequence? If you're wondering, there's a pattern in the sequence if you notice, the sum of first two elements is giving you the next element. So 0 plus 1 gives us 1, and 1 plus 1 gives us 2, 1 plus 2 gives us 3, 2 plus 3 gives us 5, and so on. So, starting with the sequence, we have figured out the first two element plays a crucial part. So, what we are going to do is, we are going to declare the first two variables, say a comma b equal to 0 comma 1. If you are wondering what this is nothing but if it is of same data type, you can declare it in one line itself, and you just have to make sure that it follows. If the sequence starts, if I'm having a here, the value of a should also start first, and if it it should also be in the second place, like, and so on and so forth. Like, you have to make sure the value and the variable are on the same place on both sides. Say if I have another c, then the value of c should be on the third place, and so on. Or if you don't want to have such complex cases, you can just give it as a equal to 0 and next as b equal to 1. B equal to 1. This is the same as what I've mentioned over here. And now for the sequence, say our output is this. How do I print or how do I get the sequence? I'm going to print the first two elements. So print of 0, I mean A, and print of B. Just don't worry about the case or the indentation. This is just a pseudocode, which means this is not the actual code that we are going to do. This is just a small part of how the code is going to go. And once we have done with 0 and 1, the rest of the sequence, say I want to print the rest. So for that, we'll be using our for loop. So for I in range of say the usual range that we followed is till n, but here say I get the input from the user n equal to 10. Here it's not the case. We have already printed the first two elements. We just want to take care of the rest of the elements. So over here giving the range as n is not suitable. So if it is going to be n, we are going to have n plus 2 in our output. Say if I want 5 outputs, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 till 3, if I'm going to give n as 5, I've already printed the first two elements, so our output is going to have 7 elements like this. So for this, for to overcome this situation, we are going to write the logic as n minus 2. So I in range of n minus 2. So it is going to be from 0 to n minus 2. Since we have already printed the first two elements, we are subtracting it from the range. And moving on, for figuring out what is the next element, I'm going to give next equal to a plus b. So that is what the logic we came across here. Sum of first two element gives the next element. And moving on, now I have to assign, say over here, if you follow, we are say it goes like 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. So this is my A, this is my B, and this is my next. Say I give it as NE or NE. Now to print this element, I have to switch the A, B, and next. So now this is going to be my A, this is going to be my B, and this is going to be my next. And similarly for this is going to be my A, this is going to be my B, and this is going to be my next. And for this element, we have this as my A, and this as my B, and this is my next. And for this element, A, B, and this is my next. So how do we make sure that this sequence is followed? For this, we are going to shift the elements, saying that my A now is going to become B, and my B is going to become my next. So this is what my simple code is. Whatever I say here is that for the first term, I've given my A and B. When it comes to the other next terms that I want to print in the consequently, continuously, it is going to be like, if I want to make sure that this pattern is followed. This is the logic that we have. And moving on, this function now is going to, this for loop is now going to help us with printing the statements. Say, now I have printed till 0, 1, 1. Say, at the initial part of the for loop, I have I as 0, A as 0, B as 1, and next is equal to sum of these both, which is going to be 1. So this is what I have calculated from the first iteration. When the iteration changes to 1, my A becomes B. So when this encounters A equal to B, and B is equal to next. So now I'm going to swap the elements. Say now my A is 1 and now my B is also 1, since my next is 1 here. So this sum is going to be 2 here. The first iteration is over. We move on to second. Now the B goes up. Now this becomes next, and the next becomes 3. And similarly, this becomes 3, this becomes 2, this becomes 3, and we get a 5 here which goes up again, 4, and this becomes 3, we have 5, this becomes 8, 5, we have a 5 here, and then this 5 becomes 8, and this 8 becomes 13. Say 13. On the sixth iteration, it is going to be 8, 13, and the list goes on till you have 10 elements. So now we have figured out the Fibonacci series also. Let us move on to how we get the input from user for a list and print the list in reverse. So to get the input for a list and print it in the reverse, so how is the for loop going to be used for this? If you're going to ask, I'm going to declare an empty list. Say A equal to the open and close brackets, square brackets. An empty list declaration is going to go like this without any elements inside it. This is the correct syntax for declaring an empty list. And moving on, we will use a for loop to get the let us just get the input, say number of elements from user, using the input function, say int of input of you have, and I assume I got the input from the user as 5. Moving on to the for loop for I in range of n, we will be having our input, say some other element b equal to input or from the user. And how do I add this to my list? If you're going to ask, a dot append of, and this variable goes in a dot append of b. So this input that I get from the user is going to be appended to the list. This function append adds adds the element that you pass inside the function at the end of the list, and as we have an empty list, so this just gets this just gets added to the list one by one. So if you want to print this list in reverse, there's a technique called slicing, where it is similar to how we declare our the start, stop, and how we increment in the range. It is similar to that, where I'm going to declare it as reverse, a variable. I'm going to give a of square brackets, and I'm going to give 2 colon and minus 1. This will help us print the list in reverse. This is called as slicing. Slicing refers to it is as simple as it means. Say it is going to cut it into fragments. I'm going to say which things I want to include in that fragment. So my start is going to be as usual, and my stop is also going to be usual. So there is no cutting from here, but from from where should I start my cutting? It is going to be from the end of the list. Say if I have a list, for example, say A I give as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. If it is in my beginning, this index is going to be referred as 0, and this is going to be 1, and so on and so forth. But if I want to print this from the end, this last element will be represented by -1, and this will be -2, and this will be -3, and the sequence continues. And now if I print reverse, I will be having my reversed list. It is as simple as it looks. So moving on to the sixth question, we have printing key value pairs using loop and find the average of people. See, we have key value pairs, we have it in our dictionary. So now we have to declare a dictionary where you have, say, A, B as 2, C as 3. Just for the example, like the starting example on how to print, we'll be using for loop for the same. Say for key comma say keys and values in a dot items. As we went through, a dot items is going to return us the key value pairs as a tuple. So now I can, using print function, I can print the keys. Say you can just give it as keys comma values. So now both the key and value will be printed together. So the example for this fizzbus is going to be a sequence where wherever you encounter a multiple of 3 you print fizz, a multiple of 5 you print bus, and in case say a number is divisible by both 3 and 5, like in case of 15 you print fizz bus. For this we are going to get the input from the user, say how many elements you want to have. Moving on with the number of elements as 15, I'm going to declare an empty list since the question requires us to return a list containing strings. So I have declared an empty list. And now moving on to the for loop part, since here it starts from 1, the fizzbus example starts from 1, I'm going to have my I starting from 1 till n plus 1. And here we will be having a dummy variable where you keep storing the values again and again, and you append it to the list at the end. Say this empty string we declare as R, And moving on to the index checking part, we are going to check if I is divisible by 3 first. So if I mod 3 is equal to 0, we are going to append fizz to this empty string. So r plus equal to, we have fizz. And the next condition goes on I mod 5 is equal to 0. We are going to check if it is divisible by 5. We print, say we append, we concatenate this string as bus. So r plus equal to bus. And moving on, if this none of these condition is fulfilled, so r will be plus equal to str of I. I'm converting the integer into a string here, and I'm concatenating to the empty string. And further, I'm going to append ans dot append of r. So our first question here is the odd index. We are supposed to print the values which are in the odd index. So I have declared my index, the list here. Index starts from 0 and it goes on like 1, 2, 3, and 4. So our odd index starts from 2 and 4, 6, and 8. These are the odd index values we have. And let us see if this code works. So now I've given that if I mod 2 is not equal to 0, if the index is not divisible by 2, I'm printing the value in that particular index. So this code works. Moving on to the second one. Let us see the factorial question. Here I've declared the number of terms as 10, and I'm declaring the first two elements as 0 and 1, and I'm printing the first two elements also. As we know that the sequence should start from 0, 1, and the third element should be the sum of first two elements. Say if you're wondering why I have given an underscore instead of any other variable, underscore in programming language conveys that this variable has no much significance in the whole code. As in, we are not going to use this variable anywhere in the program. It is just considered as a dummy variable, but for the iterative purpose. So moving on to the for loop, I'm printing the next term using the a and b, and then I'm shifting the variables. Let us see how this program works. So as you can see, my Fibonacci series is printed 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and then sum of these two is 21, sum of these two is 34. Looking at the password verification, we are going to get the password from the user and declare the first few, say the uppercase as false. These are called as flags. Like we are going to check if these conditions are true or not. And moving on to the conditional part, say I have the primary condition that the length of the password should be greater than 8, and I'm going to check the other conditions like uppercase, lowercase, and digits. If none of these conditions are true, the default values for these variables are declared above, and hence it is called as flags. We are making sure that the variable never went through any of this block of code. And if if and only if all of these statements are true, we are going to print that it is valid. Else we are going to print it as invalid. So let us check how this goes. So my password is going to be like say this time I'm not giving any digits. So we are getting invalid because the last statement is not returning true. Moving to the fifth question, we have to get the input from user for a list and reverse the list. I'm getting the number of elements for the list from user, and then I have an empty list over here, and here is a for loop for getting the elements from the user and appending it to the list. If you are wondering what this F is for, this F denotes F strings that help us to add variables and expressions within strings. So if I want to mention that enter the first element or enter the second element or third element and so on, we can use this format. And moving on, I am printing the original list for reference, and to reverse a list I'm using this slicing method. Let us see how this code runs. So I'm giving the number of elements as say 5. So 5. We have 6, 7, 1, or 2, then some random. And as you can see, the list over here is reversed. Moving on to the sixth problem, where we have to print the key value using loop. I have declared a dictionary containing the keys as apple, banana, cherry, and the values as 3, 5, and 2. So for printing this, we have taken two variables for the loop, say key and value, and here I've used the dictionary dot items where it returns the list of key value pairs as a tuple. And here I have given two print statements for printing my key and the value. Now let us see how this works. So we have got the output as the separate key value as you can see. So this is one way of printing the key value pairs using the for loop. So looking at our seventh question, the fizz bus, I'm getting the input from the user, say using the input function, and to make sure that the input that I get from the user is converted into an integer, I've used the int of input of statement, and I've stored it in n. And now I have declared the answer as an empty list, and using for loop with the same concept that we applied in the the pseudocode part, I've given result as an empty string. I'm checking if the index, that is I, is divisible by 3 or divisible by 5, or if not, the string is empty. Say if the string is still empty, which means it is neither divisible by 3 or not divisible by 5. I'm going to concatenate this index as a string. And now that I have a string, I'm going to append it to the result. So each time this loop runs, each index is validated against these three conditions, and the result of corresponding if statement will be added to the answer. Let us see how this works. So if I'm going to enter the number of elements as, say, 20 this time, we've got our output as the following. Say for 1, it goes to the last statement where neither of these conditions are executed and the result stays empty. So it converts the index into a string and appends it to the list. Similar, the same method goes to 2. And for fizz, the third element, index 3 is divisible by 3, so we print fizz, as in fizz gets added on to result, and result contains fizz now, and we append result to the answer. So fizz is added to the result, the final output. And moving on with 4 and 5 and moves on. 6 is divisible by 3, so fizz. 9 is divisible by 3, so fizz. 10 divisible by 5, 12 divisible by 3, and 15 is divisible by both. Say the condition where you you concatenate fizz first and then you add buzz next to it, so you have a fizz buzz together, and it repeats. 18 is divisible by 3 and 20 is divisible by 5.